My husband told everyone I was dramatic for suspecting infidelity. But when I found his hidden journal, it wasn't about another woman. It was about strategies to isolate me from my family. I read his own words aloud to his parents. The man who claimed to be their loyal son stood exposed. The laughter at the dinner table froze me in place. My husband's voice rang out, sharp and mocking, as he leaned back in his chair and told everyone, "She thinks I'm hiding something. Can you believe that? Always so dramatic." His parents chuckled politely, my sister-in-law smirked, and even my own cousin shook his head with amusement. I sat there, cheeks burning, my fork untouched, wishing the floor would swallow me whole. I forced a smile, though inside I was crumbling. The humiliation was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat. He had turned my private fears into a public joke, stripping me of dignity in front of people I loved. I lowered my gaze to the plate, pretending to be distracted, but every laugh echoed like a cruel reminder. No one believed me. That night when we returned home, I confronted him. "Why did you say that?" My voice shook, but I stood firm. He shrugged, loosening his tie, his tone casual. "Because it's ridiculous. You're imagining things." I had to lighten the mood. His dismissal cut deeper than the laughter. He didn't care about my pain. He cared about appearances. I lay awake long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. The unease in my marriage had been growing for months, but tonight it had reached a breaking point. His small gestures, avoiding eye contact, brushing off my questions, changing plans at the last minute, had all piled up into a mountain of doubt. And now he had turned those doubts into entertainment. The next morning I noticed his phone buzzing on the counter. He picked it up quickly, too quickly, and stepped outside. I caught a glimpse of the screen. The call had no name, just a number. When he returned, he claimed it was work. But his job didn't require secretive calls at dawn. I wanted to ask more, but his sharp glance silenced me. Later that week he canceled a visit to my parents. "You're tired," he said, "and they'll only overwhelm you." His words sounded caring, but I knew better. He had been finding excuses for months to keep me away from them. Birthdays, anniversaries, even casual dinners, he always had a reason. At first I believed him. I thought he was protecting me. But now I saw the pattern. He wasn't shielding me. He was isolating me. My inner conflict grew heavier each day. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that I was imagining things. But every time I tried, something new happened. He twisted conversations, making me doubt myself. If I asked about his late nights, he'd laugh and say, "You're paranoid." If I mentioned the canceled family visits, he'd insist, "I'm just looking out for you." His words sounded reasonable, but his tone carried a sharp edge, one that left me questioning my own sanity. One evening I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, urgent. "She's starting to suspect," he said. My heart stopped. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more, but he ended the call abruptly. When I asked who it was, he smiled coldly. "You really need to stop imagining things." The manipulation was relentless. He made me feel guilty for asking questions, ashamed for doubting him, foolish for trusting my instincts. I began to withdraw, speaking less, observing more. I watched his movements, his expressions, his habits. Every detail became evidence in my mind. The breaking point came at another family gathering. My cousin mentioned how I hadn't been visiting lately. Before I could answer, my husband interjected, "She's been too busy worrying about me cheating." The room erupted in laughter. My chest tightened, my hands trembled, and I felt the sting of betrayal sharper than ever. He had humiliated me again, reducing my pain to a punchline. I excused myself, stepping outside into the cold night air. Tears threatened, but I held them back. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I stood under the stars, breathing deeply, trying to steady myself. That was the moment I knew, I couldn't keep living like this. Something was hidden beneath his calm exterior, and I had to find it. Back home I began searching quietly. I checked drawers, shelves, even the glove compartment of his car. I wasn't looking for another woman. I was looking for the truth, whatever it was. Fear gnawed at me, but determination pushed me forward. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. One night while he slept, I crept into his study. Papers were scattered across the desk, but nothing unusual. Then I noticed a locked drawer. My pulse quickened. I searched for the key, finding it tucked inside a book. My hands shook as I opened the drawer, but inside I found only bills and receipts. Still, the discovery fueled me. If he was hiding something, I would uncover it. I began keeping notes, documenting every incident. The phone calls, the cancelled visits, the dismissive remarks. I wrote them down, building a record of his behavior. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a start. At night, I lay awake, listening to the silence. The doubts pressed against me, heavy and suffocating. But beneath the fear, a spark of resolve grew stronger. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And soon I would have the evidence to prove it. I was still awake when the house fell silent, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. My husband's steady breathing from the bedroom should have been comforting, but instead it felt like a reminder of the wall between us. I sat in the dim glow of the lamp, staring at the notes I had been keeping, each line a record of his dismissals, his secrecy, his manipulation. The evidence was scattered, incomplete. I needed something undeniable. It was during one of those restless nights that I noticed the bookshelf in his study. He had always been protective of it, insisting that certain volumes were private. I had never questioned it before, but now curiosity gnawed at me. I ran my fingers along the spines, pausing at a row of old journals tucked behind larger books. One in particular caught my eye, its leather cover worn, edges frayed as though it had been handled often. My pulse quickened. I pulled it free, the weight heavy in my hands. For a moment I hesitated, guilt flickering. But then I remembered the laughter at the dinner table, the humiliation, the secrecy. I opened the journal. The first page was filled with neat handwriting, not the casual notes of a man reflecting on his day, but deliberate, calculated entries. My eyes scanned the words and my stomach tightened. It wasn't about another woman. It wasn't about work. It was about me. Limit her visits. Make her believe family gatherings drain her energy. Redirect her focus to me. I froze, the words blurring as my mind struggled to process them. I turned the page. Control her communication. Suggest phone calls are unnecessary. Intercept letters when possible. Remind her I am all she needs. My breath caught. Each entry was a strategy, a plan to isolate me from the people I loved. He hadn't been careless or spontaneous. He had written it down step by step as though my life were a project to dismantle. I flipped through more pages, my hands trembling. There were notes about conversations we had, twisted into tactics. When she doubts, laugh. Call her dramatic. Make others laugh too. Reinforce the idea she exaggerates. The humiliation at dinner wasn't an accident. It was part of his plan. Anger surged through me, hot and unrelenting. I whispered aloud, "You wrote this." My voice cracked, but the words gave me strength. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. He had documented his betrayal in his own handwriting. I closed the journal, clutching it to my chest. My mind raced. Should I confront him now? Should I wait? The thought of waking him, shoving the journal in his face, tempted me. But I knew he would twist it, deny it, claim it was a joke or a draft. I needed to be careful. The next morning I slipped the journal back into its place, but not before copying several entries into my own notebook. I wanted proof that couldn't be erased. As I wrote, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't doubting myself. I had his words. Over the following days, I tested the journal against reality. When I mentioned visiting my parents, he immediately said, "You're too tired. They'll overwhelm you." Just as he had written. When I tried to call my sister, he distracted me with errands, steering me away from the phone. Every action matched the entries. One evening, I left a letter from my cousin on the table, unopened. Later I found it tucked away in a drawer, hidden. My chest tightened. He was following his own script. I began to notice smaller details too. The way he positioned himself near the mailbox, the way he lingered by the phone, the way he smiled when I hesitated to speak. It was all part of the plan. The anger inside me grew, but so did my resolve. I rehearsed conversations in my head, imagining how I would reveal the truth. I pictured his parents' faces when they heard his words, their loyal son exposed. One night as I sat with the journal again, I whispered, "You thought you could silence me. But you gave me the weapon yourself." The journal became my secret companion. I carried its weight in my mind, knowing it held the key to my freedom. Each entry was a reminder of his betrayal, but also of my strength. I started leaving small tests for him. I mentioned plans with friends I hadn't seen in months. Predictably, he discouraged me, suggesting I stay home. I pretended to agree, but inside I marked another tally against him. I left my phone on the counter, unlocked, with a message from my mother visible. Later I found the phone moved, the message deleted. My hands shook as I realized how far he was willing to go. The journal confirmed everything. He wasn't careless. He was deliberate. And now I had proof. One evening I sat across from him at dinner, the journal hidden in my bag. He smiled, asking about my day, his tone light. I studied him, wondering if he sensed my knowledge. I wanted to throw the journal on the table to watch his face crumble. But I held back. Timing mattered. Instead I asked casually, "Do you ever write things down? Plans, ideas?" He chuckled. "Not really." "Why?" I forced a smile. "Just curious." Inside I burned with the truth. He had written everything down. And soon I would use it. That night I sat alone, the journal open before me. I read the entries aloud, my voice steady as though practicing for an audience. Make her doubt herself. Call her dramatic. Laugh with others. The words echoed in the room, heavy and undeniable. I imagined his parents sitting across from me, hearing their son's words. I imagined their shock, their disbelief, their anger. The thought gave me strength. The journal wasn't just proof of betrayal. It was a map of his cruelty, a record of every manipulation. And now it was mine. I closed it gently, my decision clear. I would not confront him alone. I would expose him where it mattered most. The journal lay heavy in my hands as I set the table. My palms were damp, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might betray me before the words ever could. The house was quiet, but inside me a storm raged. Tonight I would not be silenced. Tonight I would speak. I had invited his parents over under the pretense of a simple dinner. They arrived with warm smiles, carrying a basket of fruit, unaware of the truth waiting for them. My husband greeted them cheerfully, his voice smooth, his charm intact. He had always been their pride, their loyal son. I forced myself to smile, though my stomach twisted. We sat down, the clinking of cutlery filling the silence. My husband carried the conversation easily, asking about their health, their neighbors, their garden. His parents laughed, their eyes glowing with affection. I watched him, every word dripping with false sincerity, and I felt the weight of the journal pressing against me like a secret burning to be revealed. Finally, I could bear it no longer. I placed the journal on the table, the sound sharp, cutting through the chatter. His parents looked at me, puzzled. My husband's smile faltered. "I need you both to hear something," I said, my voice steady though my hands trembled. I opened the journal, flipping to the entries I had copied, the ones that revealed his calculated cruelty. At first his parents leaned forward, curious. But as I read aloud, their expressions shifted. Confusion gave way to disbelief, disbelief to shock. My husband's words, his own handwriting, spoke of isolating me, mocking me, controlling me. Each sentence was a blade, slicing through the image of the son they thought they knew. My husband tried to laugh it off. "She's being dramatic again," he said, his tone dismissive. "You know how she exaggerates." But the journal's words were undeniable. I read them clearly, my voice unwavering. Limit her visits. Make her believe family gatherings drain her energy. Redirect her focus to me. His parents gasped softly. I continued. Control her communication. Suggest phone calls are unnecessary. Intercept letters when possible. His father's face hardened, his mother's eyes filled with hurt. "Is this true?" his father demanded, his voice sharp. My husband shifted uncomfortably, his charm slipping. "It's just notes. Ideas. Nothing serious." I shook my head, my anger rising. "These aren't ideas. They're instructions." And he followed them. Every word. The confrontation escalated quickly. His parents pressed him for answers, their voices trembling with betrayal. He tried to twist the narrative, insisting I was paranoid, that I had misunderstood. But I stood firm. For the first time in years, I refused to let him silence me. "You humiliated me in front of them," I said, my voice breaking but strong. "You laughed at me, called me dramatic, made me doubt myself. And all along you were following a plan. Your plan." His mother covered her mouth, tears brimming. His father slammed his hand against the table. "We raised you better than this," he said, his voice shaking with fury. My husband's mask cracked. He looked at me, his eyes cold, his jaw tight. "You think you've won," he muttered. I met his gaze, unflinching. "This isn't about winning. It's about truth. And tonight you can't hide it. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of his parents' breathing. I felt the weight lift from my chest, the years of doubt and humiliation dissolving. I had reclaimed my voice. His parents turned to me, their expressions filled with sorrow and regret. "We didn't know," his mother whispered. "We thought he was protecting you." I nodded, my throat tight. So did I. But he was protecting himself. The confrontation stretched on, each moment peeling back layers of deception. His parents demanded explanations, but he had none. He stumbled over his words, his defenses crumbling. The journal lay open, its pages a mirror of his betrayal. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. My legs trembled, but I forced myself upright. "I've said what I needed to say," I told them. "The rest is for you to decide." My husband reached for me, his voice desperate. "Don't do this." I pulled back, my resolve unshaken. "You already did." I walked toward the door, my steps steady, each one a declaration of freedom. His parents called after me, their voices filled with emotion, but I didn't stop. I had given them the truth. That was enough. As I stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around me. I breathed deeply, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. The stars shone above, distant but steady, and for the first time in a long time, I felt dignity return. Revenge wasn't in destroying him. It was in revealing him. And tonight I had done just that. I walked away, my head held high, knowing that the silence which had once suffocated me was gone. In its place was strength, hard-earned and undeniable.